Hello everyone, this is Al Fadi, and I want to welcome you back to a continuation of this fascinating video series on the origin or the possible origin of the Quran. We covered so far the modern scholarship view on the Quran that we have in our hand today and how it basically being copied and transmitted. And then we also covered the standard Islamic narrative, which usually feeds into this modern scholarship on the early Quranic studies. But today we're going to also talk about another thing, the Islamic really conviction concerning the manuscript, or let's say manuscripts, that feed into this 1924 copy of the Quran, the standard Quranic copy, the Uthmanic type, and the list can go on and on and on. Of course, we are going to unpack what this means, but before I do that, obviously, I want to turn my attention to our guest here, Dr. J. Smith, who will unpack all of that for us. Dr. J, welcome back.
Good to be back again.
So what do Muslims say concerning, today's Quran as compared to the early Quranic manuscripts, for instance?
And listen, this is a real dilemma for Muslims, and I can understand. I'm so glad I'm not in their shoes. I'm so glad I don't have to come up with a support for this. The difficulty that Muslims are finding, and for those Muslims who are watching, this is a difficulty you're going to have to answer. And this was a difficulty, of course, that our good friends in London had to answer, because we've been asking this for quite a few years. I've been asking this since 2014 when I did my debate with Dr. Shabir Ali on this very material. And I pointed out to 6 manuscripts that existed in 2014, the 6 major manuscripts, which include the Topkapi, the Samarkand, the Ma'il, the Petropolitanus, the Husseini, and the Sana manuscript. Those 6, and I introduced them in that debate, and he was not prepared for it. And it was a huge embarrassment. Dr. Shabir Ali has not debated me since, and he had to write a 9-page rebuttal 2 weeks after the debate to try to support, and all he could come up with is the number 19. He didn't care about the matter. He just wanted the magical number 19. Mm-hmm. So in London, they realized that they needed to come up with a manuscript, because they know that if they're going to make a claim that there was a Quran in the 7th century, they've got to show us this Quran.
Who's in London? The Muslims in London?
Well, especially one guy, and his name is Mansur Ahmed. And Mansur Ahmed, why do I choose him? Because he's at Speaker's Corner. I've known him for almost 25 years. He's been there as long as I was there. Even before I was there, he was there. But who is he? He is one of the writers for the Islamic Awareness website. The Islamic Awareness website has probably the largest cache of pictures of the manuscripts. In fact, if you want to go and find out where all the Quranic manuscripts, you go to Islamic Awareness website.
And it's really fascinating website. I mean, I go to it periodically to look at things.
Why was it created? It was created by a guy named Saifullah, who back in the 1990s decided, he was at Cambridge University, he decided to start this website because we were asking this question at Speaker's Corner back in the 1990s. Mm-hmm. So this has been going on for quite a few years. About 25 years we've been asking this question. You guys, if you're going to be talking about a manuscript from the 7th century, either put up or shut up. Stop talking about it unless you can prove it to us. So they created this website to actually picture every one of these manuscripts. And Mansur Ahmed is one of the writers for this website. So he's probably the best knowledgeable that I've come across on these manuscripts. Okay. And he knew I was going to be at Speaker's Corner in 2019 in June to introduce this book. This is the book that was introduced.
I see.
This is Dan Brubaker's book. Right. And we were 2 hours after it was published, we were there at the Speaker's Corner. Hatun Tash and myself were there to introduce this book on the manuscript variants. These are the changes, and it's called Corrections in the Early Quranic Manuscripts. And so what did he do? He saw us there, and immediately what Mansur always does whenever I'm down there, he comes and brings his ladder and puts it next to mine. Uninvited, he just gets up and starts attacking me, which is fine. I don't mind that. You're not supposed to do that. That's not one of the rules. Nonetheless, they do it all the time, and Adnan Rashid used to do it all the time, and Mansur Ahmed had to do it because he did not know about this book. But here's what's interesting. I'm going to show you a clip of what happened on that day. We were on the ladder for about 30 minutes, and then finally he had to get off the ladder. But it wasn't because of this book, because he really had no response to this. It's the first time he'd seen it. He didn't even know about this. He knew about Dan Brubaker, but he didn't know what Dan Brubaker had written. It's not this that I'm going to talk about. It's what he said while he was on the ladder. So let's look at the clip, and then I'm going to unpack it, because the claims he made, I hope you're listening to that. Look at the claims he made, and then you're going to see why those claims need to be understood. So let's go and let's see what he does, because he's going to come up with what he considers to be the manuscript that he's referring to.
Got it.
Our Qur'an that we read today has a continuous textual tradition in our manuscript traditions. So now what we establish is this. The Qur'an, when we examine the manuscript traditions, by those isolated errors, scribal errors, we have a robust tradition, orally and by written form, that the Qur'an we read today is the Qur'an that has been transmitted by our generations of Muslims from day one, from the Prophet ﷺ.
Okay, Mansur, real quickly, very quickly, before you leave, how far does that tradition go back to?
That is why.
How far does that tradition go back to?
Absolute certainty of our textual and oral transmission of the Qur'an. Because not
only... did you see? He's saying textual and oral.
It is also
do you have a textual tradition that goes back to 652?
Look.
Do you have a textual tradition that goes back to 652?
Listen.
Yes or no?
Any textual...
Does you have a textual all the way back to Uthman?
Listen. Any text of the Qur'an that you examine, any text. So when we examine the Qur'an in the manuscript traditions, we have almost 250,000 manuscripts of the Qur'an across the world in libraries.
You're not answering the question. Do they go back to Uthman? Do they go back to 652?
You're interrupting when I'm speaking.
Well, answer the question.
Right. So, we have, from our textual tradition alone, more than 99% of the Quranic text from the first Islamic century.
Okay, explain when the first Islamic century goes to. It goes from 662 to 22 up to 721. So we're talking about the 8th century, am I correct?
If you go to IslamicAwareness.org, in which we have tabulated and shown Quranic manuscripts all around the world with references, which ones are carbon dated, which ones are paleographically dated, you will see the amount of first century within Islam, first century Islam, the Quranic manuscripts that we have, you have 0%.
None of them are same with the current.
Okay, here we go. Have you heard the claim he has made? Mansur, do you have 114 surahs of the Quran in one manuscript that is from the mid-7th century? Yes or no?
No.
Do you have a complete Quran from the time of Uthman, 114 surahs in our hands today that we can look at?
Hang on.
Do you want an answer? Or do you want him to waffle on? No, you don't.
We have, at the moment, you must be a Christian, right?
Answer the question.
Do you want an answer to this? Okay, let's continue on. His answer is no, they do not have that. Do you have a complete Quran from the 7th century at all? Do you have a complete Quran that's 114 surahs from the same century that Muhammad lived? Yes or no?
As I said, from the first century of Islam.
The first century goes up to 721. That's the 8th century. So your answer is 8th century. Do you have a complete Quran by the 721?
Listen.
Yes or no?
Yes or no?
Yes or no?
The guy who is demanding a complete Quran from...
You're not answering the question is yes or no?
Listen, let me respond to you in kind, right? If you examine the manuscript traditions of Jewish scripture...
We're not talking about Jewish scripture now. We're not talking about Jewish scripture. We're talking about Quranic scripture because we don't make this claim. Only the Muslims make this claim. It is the Muslim that just now said that we can go back to the first century of Islam, that's AH, which goes from 622 to 721, and that we can find a complete manuscript. Tell me where. Give me the name.
Did I not say? Of course, you did not listen to what I'm saying. That's why I need to...
Oh, you're going to change it now. So you don't have a manuscript.
Did I...
Do you have a complete manuscript in the first century of Islam?
Stop chicken.
Did I not say to you...
Oh, come on.
That we have more than 97%
Oh, it's not complete.
of the text of the Quran
It's
from
not
the first
complete.
century.
Which is not
Okay,
exactly
that's
the
all I
same
need to
what
hear.
happened.
Now, did you notice he cannot claim a complete manuscript? He cannot claim because there is no complete manuscript. He wants to take it back to the 1st century AH. What he's not telling you is that almost every one of these manuscripts are from the 8th and 9th century. What we're looking at today are the earliest manuscripts. There is nothing earlier than the Pentapolandis. There is nothing earlier than the Topkapi. There is nothing earlier than the Sana manuscript. When you look at those manuscripts, how many variants do we have? Go ahead, Mansur. Give us the number that Dan has found. We've been asking now for 1/2 hour.
I want to unpack what just happened there.
But it's interesting, by the way, because you kept asking and you don't not getting the answer. Even the crowd was asking him yes or no. But I don't know if maybe I misheard him. Earlier he says 99%. Now he's saying 97%. Did I catch it correct?
And he's still wrong.
Yeah.
You can see it's 96%.
All right.
Nonetheless, what is he talking about?
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to find out. I wanted to see what he was referring to because he didn't come up with any manuscript. He did not dare use the Topkapi or the Samarkand or the Mayo or the Hussein.
Which you would expect him to go to.
You
something
would expect
like
him to go to the earliest that we do have because none of them are complete and none of them are exactly like the Quran we have today.
Right.
The Topkapi, which is the best, has 2,270
That's what I was
variants.
thinking originally. He's thinking about the Topkapi. I mean,
That's the one they usually, but that's from the mid-8th century. That's
right.
over 100 years after Muhammad.
Exactly.
And that has over 2,270 or 2,270 variants from the Quran we have today.
So what is he talking about?
So what is he talking about? Well, we wanted to go back. So I had my team in London go back and research. What did he mean by this 97%? You want to see what he found out? Look and see what he found out. What he was talking about. So he said 99. He moved it down to 97%.
That's right.
I gave him 721. Actually, it's 719 is the end of the 1st century. 622 to 719. So I gave him 2 extra years. And remember, I gave him 3 different categories. I said, first of all, do you have one from the time of Uthman, 652? No, he didn't have any there. Do you have one from the 7th century? I gave him the 7th century. He still didn't have any there. And then finally I said, okay, let's go with what your category is, which is the 1st Islamic century. That's 622. And I said 721.
And you're referring to a complete Quran.
A complete Quran.
Right.
And he says we have 97%. So it must be one manuscript that is 97%. Where is that? I mean, do you know of any manuscript that's 97%?
From the 7th century?
From the before 729 or 721
I'm not
or
aware of any
719.
because, like I said, I gravitated towards the Topkapi, but that's an 8th century. And that's the claim is, I think, about 97, 98%, but it does have over 2,000 at least.
That's mid-8th century.
Right.
So that's not the 1st century.
Right.
So you can't throw the Topkapi out. So what is he referring to?
And
There
that's
must be
interesting.
a
What is it?
manuscript that he's talking about.
That's what he's
and you're curious, aren't you?
right. I mean, again, I'm in the early Quranic studies, and this is the $1 million question. Show me one copy.
So why did he tell me?
Yeah.
He kept on saying 99, 97. He wanted, and I'd like to know
Even
where's
95 would have been fine with me if he
Listen,
has.
I'd be ready with 20% or 50% or 60%, something that is at least that is from the time of Uthman. That's all
Right.
I'm asking.
Right.
Oh, he was saying up to 721. Let's look and see what he did. So he went up to Islamic Awareness website that night to find out what he was talking about, and this is what we found. Now, before we do that, let's go back to the screen, if you would mind again. And remember, what are we talking about? We're talking about textual criticism here, and I'm just going to read this quote from François Doroche. He says this. When the Al-Azhar specialist, this is Al-Azhar University in Cairo, in 1920, so it's actually 1924, convened to produce a reliable edition of the Quran, he says towards the 1920s, and to be more specific, 1924, they never thought of looking for the earliest written witnesses, had they known how to identify them, but used in the course of the work the specialized literature on the Qira'at. We're going to get into the Qira'at later on, or the orthography, which developed in Muslim scholarly circles from the second, which would be the 2nd century Islam, which would be the 8th century for us, 719 and on. All right. So that's what they're looking at. They're not doing what we do. Now, what do we do whenever we look at biblical scholarship or textual criticism of the Bible? Let's look at the next slide. The next slide is very clear that whenever we look at the Bible, what do? We go to the earliest manuscript.
That's right.
You always go to the earliest manuscript. And I've got 3 of them right up there. There you can see the Codex Vaticanus, anywhere between 300 and 325.
And these are earliest complete. You know, we do have fragments that predate that too.
Oh, we have the Bodmer Papyrus. You have the John Rylands manuscript.
Right.
These are all from the 2nd and 3rd. I mean, you have an enormous amount of stuff. The Chester Beatty manuscripts,
That's right.
they're in Dublin. Enormous amount of material from the 3rd, but not complete. These are the complete manuscripts that he's claiming for the 1st century of Islam.
Correct.
We're looking back, and I'm saying we could claim this from the 4th century. 300 to 225, 330 to 360, 400. That's the 5th century. So this is 200 to 300 years before what they're claiming. So we could show that these are easily to look at. You can go to the British Library. You can go to in Rome to the Vatican Library, and you can see the Vaticanus and the Sinaiticus and the Alexandrinus. So what's this manuscript that he's looking at? Here it is. And you go up the Islamic Awareness website, and this is what you're going to find. You're going to find this graph. This is a cumulative surahs tabulated before 719, before the end of the 1st century AH. Notice, on the Islamic Awareness website, it was 96% they have been able to find. Oh, so that's exciting. 96% of the Quran, they have been, from a manuscript that is 96% complete, 114 surahs. That's what I was thinking until I turned the page. When you go to the next page, this is what you find. There's not one manuscript. There are 63 fragments.
So he's taking a piece of a puzzle, putting it together, and saying you have a complete Quran. Is that what he's doing?
Look at this right here.
Yeah.
See what I'm pointing to? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way down. This is what he's talking about. And they got it. This is from the Islamic Awareness website. I'm not making this up. When I saw this, I had to laugh. There is no manuscript. It's a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit over here. They're just picking, choosing little over there. They're taking, look at some of these aren't just a few ayahs long. They're just little fragments about this size.
Besides, did he account for the other variants and differences that are there?
You're jumping the gun again. You always like to jump the gun. I don't care about that right now. I want to see what are these. Because notice this one here, that's the 2165. That is the best they've got. That's the Mut'yal. That's the one in the British Library. That's the top one. It's about 50% of the Quran, right?
Yeah.
Take a look.
Yeah.
These, they're claiming, all these 63 fragments, they're claiming before 719.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, I wanted my team to see if this is correct. I had no idea. There's no one manuscript. And this one is well, hold on. We're going to get to that. Where and had they dated? And how did they date all of these before 719? That's
another question I was going to ask. What is the dating?
Well, that's the major question. Yeah. Really, if he's going to claim that they're in the 1st century, that means they all have to come before 719, right?
At least, does that mean he has fragments that date to Uthman? Is that what he's trying to claim?
Hold on.
Yeah.
You want to see what we found?
What?
I had my team in London do this. They went through all of these, every one of these, all 63, to find out really where they're dated. Here's what they found. And this is the first time you're seeing this. So I want to see if you're surprised or not. Okay? And any of those Muslims who are watching, this is the best that you've got. This is the Islamic Awareness website. This is Mansur Ahmed. This is what he was talking about on that letter. He was saying, we have it finally in the 1st century. 96%, Mr. Smith. You don't even have anything from the 1st century of your Bible. We can come up with 96%. Now, he said 97 and he even said 99 to begin with. You're right. He did bring it down. It's actually 96. Let's go through. Now, when you look at these 63, take a look at, let's go back, and I'm just going to follow the animation here. Watch this animation. Notice, those that I'm putting up there, those are in green. These are all tentatively dated. In other words, their scholars have not come to any agreement on those 20. Those are the green arrows there. So 20 of them are tentatively. They shouldn't even use them because no one's come to any conclusion on them.
So nobody have dated them with
certainty.
In a conclusive
no certainty.
Way. Okay.
Now take a look at the next 9. Look at these 9. These 9 that I'm going to put up here in blue, all of them are after 719. Okay. They should not even be on the list. And notice which is the biggest one?
Top copy?
No. The Mut'yal. 2165. The biggest one they have, there's 50% of the Quran up here, is at the top of the list. They should not have these ones at all on the list because these all come after 719 that the scholars have dated. So that's a problem. Now let's look. We're still about half of them to go. So now let's look at this next one and take a look at all these here. Every one that you see going up in red there, all those red arrows, those no one's done any work on. So how in the world did they come up with these 34 all before 719? They have no study done on these. These are just ones that they needed to get to the 96%. They had to get to 96%. They just grabbed these all over the place so they could get up to the 96%, and they haven't dated any of them. And basically what he's saying, this is a lie. So let's review now. Let's go back to the screen again, and let's look at the animation. Let's go remember, of the 63 manuscripts, 20 of them that I'm putting up right now are tentatively dated with disagreements between scholars. That's the best they're going to get, those 20 there. That's the best they're going to get. But the best one amongst them only goes up to 22% of the Quran. It's not even a third of the Quran.
Right.
The next 9, they should never even put up there. There's the ones in the blue. And the ones I'm putting up right now, the red ones, those are 34. No one's even had done any work on them. So how did they even come to that conclusion? What that means, all of them are either later or tentatively dated, or no one even knows. So what we're saying here is that everything you're looking at, the 63 that he'd been claiming, there were 99% and there were 97%. When you look at that, almost all of them, except for 20 of them, he should not even used.
So the 20 are at least within that time frame, the 752.
But they're all 8th century. They are all between 705 and 719.
So
Isn't that interesting?
Still doesn't have what answers the question. Do you have anything that dates back to Uthman? Even if you use these 20.
You are going to find some, like the Birmingham Folio.
Okay.
I'm willing to go with the Birmingham Folio. 33 verses that are found in the Birmingham Folio, because the Birmingham Folio, according to carbon dating, goes between 565 up to 745, or 568 to 745 is what they give. Remember, that came out in 2050, and everybody was ballyhooing, this is great, this is amazing. We have now found a Quran that exists at the time of Muhammad's life, because he was born in 570 and died in 632.
Does he have a sana in here also?
Interestingly, they don't have the sana there.
Even the second layer, the upper layer?
They don't have the second layer of the sana there.
Wow. But even if you use the sana, the upper layer, and even, like you said...
they do have it here. Sorry, it is right here. Out of 331 is right there.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, I mean, those don't give you the full Quran. These are just small fragments.
That is not even 20% of the Quran.
Right, right. So you still have to fill the gap. And what you're saying, to fill the gap, you have to rely now on things that haven't been tested yet. You have to rely on things that are after the 7th century. And that's the claim?
No, I'm even going to go one step further. There are 7th century. I would go with the Birmingham Folio.
You mean 7th century fragments you're talking?
Well, there's 33 verses. Take a look at those 33
out
verses.
of 6,200 and some.
Okay, and what are those 33 verses? There's chapter 18, chapter 19, and chapter 20 of the Quran.
Right.
Have you looked at the stories?
It's all Christian, Moses, Mary, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, the first one is the 7 sleepers of Ephesus.
There you go.
What's the date for the 7 sleepers of Ephesus? That's the 5th century. The other one is the references or the Qur'an of James the Lesser. That is 2nd century. And then the other part is, as you say, the story of Moses, which comes from the Old Testament, which is will be 1400 BC. So can you see, all 3 of those stories have nothing to do with Islam, and they are all dated prior to Islam. In fact, they're dated hundreds of years before the Quran. So that does not surprise me that those are from the 7th century, because they were all well known. They were being used. But who used them? Who used those 3 stories?
Well, I mean, you would expect the Christians.
These are all Christian texts. Are you starting to guess to see where I'm going to go with this?
Right. So
the first Arabic text, the earliest Arabic text that they were ballyhooing in 2050 as from Muhammad, no, these texts that they were on those Birmingham folios, those 33 verses, remember 33 out of 370 in those 3 surahs, only 33 they can find, that's only 10% of them, all have to do with pre-Islamic, pre-Quranic, pre-Muhammad reference stories that the Christians were already using in Arabic. So
but also,
that we are not surprised by.
If we were to add the Sana manuscript lower layer, you begin to have even a different text.
A different text from the upper layer. Right. And remember what, we're going to get into this because we're going to, in fact, we're going to come, that's for another episode yet to come. But can you now see, this is the best they have got. 63 fragments is all they have got. And except for 20 of them, none of them are prior to 719 because they're all, even those 20 are from the 8th century.
So based on all of this, where are we going next?
Okay, what we're going to do, because now the next one is, hold on a minute. Even if you did have an Quran, or even if you did have a Proto-Quran, or even if you did have an archetype, is it the same Quran that we have today? What Muslims will say is, absolutely. Remember Dr. Yasir Qadhi, he used to say this all the time. Not one word, not one letter is different. What does he mean by that, and can he support that?
Yeah, and even Shabir Ali began to say that the message is not lost. So now he is changing the tone as well. Well, I think everybody have enjoyed, of course, the look at this. Obviously, the video at the beginning was an eye-opener when somebody would say you have 99% of the Quran, and then later 97, and then 96. Still, I mean, I was eager to see what does exactly that mean. And now we can see where this claim is coming from, which sadly doesn't even represent a fragment of the Quran as we know it today. So next time, we will begin to address the preservation of the Quran. Indeed, as a former Muslim, I can tell you, I grew up believing that the Quran we have in our hand today is the exact replica of the Quran that was revealed by the Prophet and then was collected first by Abu Bakr and Omar and then later by Uthman. So let's see if this claim holds up. Until next time, have a blessed day.